In the spring of 1986, McDonnell Douglas launched what it believed would be the aircraft that saved its commercial aviation business, the MD-11 program, a development of the DC-10 with two-crew cockpit technology, upgraded engines, improved aerodynamics, and specific performance guarantees that exceeded anything the original aircraft had delivered, was offered to airlines with numbers attached: guaranteed range, guaranteed payload, guaranteed operating costs. The pitch was not merely that the aircraft was better than the DC-10, it was that the aircraft would do things the DC-10 couldn't. At economics, the DC-10 couldn't match, and that airlines could bet their route networks on those numbers. Delta Airlines ordered 52, KLM ordered 10. Swissair, Finnair, Korean Air, and several other carriers added their commitments. The total order book, when the program launched, suggested that the aviation industry had accepted McDonnell Douglas's argument. The DC-10's reputation had been damaged by events that had nothing to do with the MD-11's design, and the MD-11 was a different aircraft that deserved to be judged on its own terms. The MD-11 turned out to weigh too much. The performance guarantees turned out to be wrong. To understand what the MD-11 was trying to recover from, it is necessary to understand what the DC-10 had become by 1979. The Douglas DC-10 had entered service in August 1971 as a three-engine widebody capable of carrying 250 to 380 passengers on routes where the 747 was too large. It had sold well in its early years. American, United, Continental, KLM, Swissair, and many others had committed to it. The Turkish Airlines Flight 981 crashed in March 1974, which killed 346 people near Paris and became the worst aviation disaster in history at that time, was caused by a cargo door failure linked to a design defect that had been internally documented at the manufacturing facility, but had not resulted in a mandatory airworthiness directive before the accident. The door failure caused the aircraft's floor to collapse, severing the control cables beneath it. McDonnell Douglas corrected the cargo door design. The type continued flying. The reputation damage was real but survivable. The investigation identified a specific cause with a specific fix, and the aircraft had defenders who could point to its record on routes where the door problem was not a factor. Then came the 25th of May, 1979, at Chicago O'Hare. American Airlines Flight 191, a DC-10 departing for Los Angeles, lost its left engine and pylon on the takeoff roll. The pylon had been weakened by a maintenance procedure used by American Airlines that was contrary to the manufacturer's recommendations. The engine and pylon were removed as a single unit by forklift, placing stress on the pylon's aft bulkhead flange that the design had not been built to absorb. The flaw propagated into a crack. The crack was not caught. The assembly failed at 325 feet above the runway. The engine separation severed hydraulic lines controlling the left wing slats. The slats retracted. The left wing stalled before the right. The aircraft rolled left and pitched nose down into the ground. All 273 people on board were killed, along with 2 on the ground. It remains the deadliest single aviation accident on American soil. The FAA grounded every DC-10 in the United States for 37 days. An unprecedented measure for a type in widespread commercial service. By the time the type returned to service, public trust in the DC-10 had been altered permanently. The aircraft was mechanically safe. The investigation had found a maintenance procedure error, not a design defect in the aircraft as operated. But safety and trust are not the same condition in the commercial aviation market. McDonnell Douglas understood this. The MD-11 was the response. The MD-11 was not a new aircraft. It was a development of the DC-10, the same basic airframe, the same three-engine trijet configuration, updated with a range of engineering improvements that MDC believed would make it a qualitatively better machine. The two-crew cockpit eliminated the flight engineer position that the DC-10 had required, reducing operating costs and bringing the aircraft in line with the glass cockpit technology Boeing was fielding on the 757 and 767. The winglets improved aerodynamic efficiency. The fuel capacity was increased. The engines were more efficient. Taken together, MDC's engineering team calculated that these improvements would produce an aircraft with substantially better range and payload than the DC-10 and substantially better than anything else in the trijet market. The guarantees MDC wrote into its sales contracts reflected these calculations. The MD-11 was offered with a guaranteed range of approximately 7,240 nautical miles in standard 3-class configuration. Airlines that ordered it were not merely buying an aircraft with published specifications that they assumed would be met. They were buying contractual commitments to performance figures on which they planned their entire route networks. Delta planned Pacific routes. Non-stop services between the United States and Asian destinations required the guaranteed range to be met precisely because there was no margin to absorb a shortfall. The MD-11's promised range made those routes viable. A shorter-range MD-11 made them impossible without a fuel stop that destroyed the economics and the competitive proposition. KLM, which operated one of the densest long-haul route networks in the world from Amsterdam, had similar requirements. Swissair, operating intercontinental services from Geneva and Zurich, had bought the aircraft for routes it needed the guaranteed range to fly. The orders were placed, the deposits were paid, the aircraft were built. The MD-11 that rolled off the production line in 1989 and 1990 was heavier than the MD-11 that had been sold. The weight increase was not dramatic in percentage terms. The aircraft was not twice as heavy as the specification. But in commercial aviation, the relationship between weight, fuel consumption, and range is not forgiving of small increments. Every pound of additional empty weight is a pound of payload or fuel that cannot be carried. At the payload and range values that MDC had guaranteed, the MD-11's actual empty weight translated to a range shortfall of approximately 500 to 600 nautical miles, with a full passenger load on long-range sectors. 500 nautical miles is the distance from New York to Cleveland. It is, on a trans-Pacific route, the difference between landing at destination and being required to stop somewhere else first. On the routes Delta had planned, Los Angeles to Tokyo, Atlanta to Frankfurt at full capacity, the shortfall changed the commercial proposition of operating the aircraft entirely. MDC attempted engineering fixes. The winglets were added in part to address the shortfall. Software optimizations to the flight management system could improve cruise efficiency by a small margin. The fixes were real and the improvements were measurable. They were not sufficient. The MDC that had sold the aircraft on the basis of one range figure could not make the aircraft achieve that figure, and the gap between what had been promised and what was delivered was too large to close through incremental improvement. The airlines that had ordered the MD-11 in good faith, on the basis of contractual performance guarantees, were now operating an aircraft that could not fulfill those guarantees. They had restructured their route planning, their crew scheduling, and their maintenance contracts around an aircraft that was performing at a different level than the one they had been sold. By the way, if you're into stories like this, subscribing takes 2 seconds, and there's a lot more coming. Delta Airlines began the formal process of pursuing MDC for its performance shortfall claims in the early 1990s. The airline had ordered 52 MD-11s, representing one of the largest single airline commitments to any MDC commercial program, and the shortfall affected a substantial proportion of the routes those aircraft were supposed to serve. Delta's arbitration with MDC over the performance guarantees was protracted and expensive for both parties. MDC's position throughout the process was constrained by the same reality that had constrained its engineering team. The aircraft was genuinely heavy. MDC had not deliberately overstated the performance. The weight increase reflected specific engineering challenges of the aircraft's development, but the guarantees had been stated in contracts, and the contracted performance had not been delivered. The arbitration produced a financial settlement. The settlement's exact value was not made public, but it was reported in aviation industry publications as substantial, and the terms required MDC to compensate Delta for the operational consequences of the performance shortfall. KLM negotiated its own settlement. Other carriers adjusted expectations downward and accepted the aircraft for routes shorter than those originally planned. Some carriers, including Swissair and Korean Air, operated the type for years on route structures it could manage. But the program's economics for McDonnell Douglas did not recover from the combination of performance disputes, settlement costs, and the reputational damage of delivering less than had been contracted. The MD-11 program produced 200 aircraft, not the 300-plus MDC had projected as commercially viable. The wide-body market the MD-11 had been designed to contest was won, as in the previous generation, by Boeing. The 777 entering service in 1995, with the range and payload the MD-11 had promised, became the defining aircraft of the long-range market. The MD-11 had entered service 5 years before the 777, with guarantees it couldn't keep, for airlines that had trusted MDC's numbers and had not yet known they were wrong to do so. The announcement that Boeing and McDonnell Douglas would merge came on the 15th of December, 1996. The merger combined the world's largest commercial aircraft manufacturer with the company that had once competed with it for dominance of the global market and was now, in commercial aviation terms, a distant third behind both Boeing and Airbus. The regulatory approvals were completed on the 1st of August 1997. McDonnell Douglas, as an independent entity, ceased to exist. The aircraft programs that MDC had in development and in production did not stop. The production lines in Long Beach, California, the same facility that had built the DC-9, the DC-10, and the MD-80 series, continued operating under Boeing ownership. The MD-80 family, which had become a narrow-body workhorse for American Airlines and other carriers, continued in production. The MD-11 freighter variant, the aircraft had found more natural use as a cargo aircraft than as a passenger carrier, continued being delivered to operators, including Federal Express. The MD-90, a further development of the narrow-body line, was completing its order book. American Airlines, which had operated the largest fleet of MDC narrow-body aircraft of any carrier in the world, was still receiving MD-80 deliveries years after the merger. The aircraft it was taking, designated Boeing MD-83 on documentation that now bore Boeing's name, were the same aircraft MDC had designed and sold in a previous commercial era, now being completed and delivered by a company whose identity had absorbed the manufacturer. American Airlines had experienced Flight 191, the worst accident in American aviation history, in a DC-10. It had continued ordering MD-80s. It was now accepting the final deliveries of an aircraft type from a manufacturer that no longer existed. The last MD-11 delivered to a passenger airline, the final wide-body commercial aircraft that the name McDonnell Douglas was associated with, was accepted by an airline that had ordered it in 1986, fought its manufacturer over it through the early 1990s, and was still taking delivery of the remaining aircraft in an order placed a decade earlier from a company that had since disappeared into the organization of its former competitor. The McDonnell Douglas story ends on a note that aviation history rarely produces, a company that was not merely acquired but genuinely absorbed to the point where the surviving entity deliberately phased out the products that carried the legacy name. Boeing delivered the remaining aircraft in the production queue and closed the commercial aircraft lines in Long Beach, the site that had built the DC-3, the DC-6, the DC-8, the DC-9, the DC-10, and the entire MD series was repurposed for defense and space work, a shift that was as much about the competitive reality of the commercial aviation market as it was about the merger's organizational logic. What the MD-11 story shows in its specific and documented form is the commercial cost of selling aircraft on the basis of engineering projections that the manufacturing process failed to validate. The weight that accumulated in the MD-11 structure was not a deliberate misrepresentation. The aircraft was built to its final drawings, and the drawings were built to the engineer's final specifications. The failure was in committing those specifications to airlines as contractual guarantees before the engineering work was complete enough to make the commitment reliably. Airlines operate on the basis of trusted numbers. An aircraft that performs at 80% of its guaranteed range is not 20% less valuable than the specification suggests. It is operationally incompatible with the network it was purchased to serve. The routes don't get shorter to meet the aircraft. The tickets have been sold, the gates are booked. The fleet plan has been built around an aircraft whose actual performance is a different aircraft from the one on the plan. Delta had bought the MD-11 for specific routes. when the aircraft couldn't fly those routes, the entire operational context that had justified the purchase dissolved. The settlement it received from MDC acknowledged that MDC had contracted to deliver something it had not delivered, an acknowledgement that came too late to save the program and too late to restore the relationship. The last MD-11 deliveries happened after McDonnell Douglas had ceased to exist. The airlines that accepted those aircraft received them from Boeing, a company whose identity had absorbed their former supplier, which had settled their dispute over the same aircraft, and which now no longer bore the name of the entity that had made the promises in the first place. If this story was worth your time, hit like and subscribe, and drop what you think in the comments.